Welcome back, Cineyogis. We are diving deep into the world of Woody Allen. When I first heard about this topic, I was a little confused.
Woody Allen and theology.
Right. Like, where's the connection? But then I read Gary Commins' book, Woody Allen's Theological Imagination.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, it's so fascinating.
It really opens up
It really does.
a whole new way of looking at his work.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, he's a comedian. He's known for his witty, neurotic characters.
Right.
But beneath that humor, there's this deep engagement with these really big existential questions.
Yeah. Like God, suffering, the meaning of life, all that heavy stuff.
Exactly. And it's not like he's preaching or anything. It's more like he's exploring these questions through his characters, through these absurd situations, through his signature humor.
Right.
It's that combination of humor and depth that I think makes his work so compelling.
Well, I'm ready to dive in, so let's
Yeah.
start with this concept of absurdity, which seems to be central to both Allen's work and Commons' analysis.
Yeah, great place to start. So one of the things that Allen does so well
Yeah.
is he juxtaposes the mundane with the ultimate.
Okay.
Like you'll have these characters talking about God and
carpeting.
exactly, or salvation and interior design.
Uh-huh. It's so true.
Like remember that scene in Take the Money and Run where his mother-in-law is having this casual conversation with God?
Oh, I love that scene.
It's hilarious, but it also makes you think, right? It's like, here we are, these finite beings worried about things like carpeting, and then there's this whole other realm of existence, this vast unknown that we can barely even comprehend.
And Allen just throws it all together in this
Crazy mix.
this crazy mix of the everyday and the eternal.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of what makes his work so thought-provoking. He's forcing us to confront these existential questions in the midst of our ordinary lives,
And that tension, that absurdity.
It's what makes it all so relatable, right?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we've got the mundane and the ultimate all mixed up. What else? How else does Allen convey this sense of absurdity?
Well, another thing he does is he uses these really powerful visual metaphors. Like the locked train scene in Stardust Memories. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yeah, with Woody Allen as Sandy Bates.
Exactly. He's trapped on this miserable train, and he sees another train full of happy people leaving the station, but he can't get to it.
Oh, I remember that. He's banging on the door, but it's locked.
Exactly. And it's like, what a perfect metaphor for life, right? You're searching for meaning, for happiness, but you feel like you're on the wrong track.
And you can't get off.
Yeah.
You're stuck.
The ticking clock. It really gets to you. I also love that scene where he's talking to the super intelligent being.
Oh, yeah, the one who tells him that his questions about suffering are unanswerable?
Yes. It's like, you want answers, you crave certainty, but life doesn't always give you those neat and tidy explanations.
It's frustrating.
It is. But it's also kind of liberating, wouldn't you say? How so?
Well, maybe the point isn't to find all the answers, but to embrace the mystery.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Like to accept that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay.
Right. To be comfortable with the unknown.
Yeah. And I think that ties in with another key aspect of Allen's work, which is his skepticism towards any grand system that claims to have all the answers, whether it's religion, philosophy, or even science.
Oh, absolutely. He loves to poke fun at those systems.
Oh my God, those stories he tells about his time at NYU are hilarious.
Oh, I know. Like getting 100 on a blank existential philosophy exam.
Or cheating on his metaphysics final by looking into his classmate's soul. It's just so absurd.
Pretty brilliant.
But under the humor, he's making a serious point, right?
Totally.
Like we can't just think our way out of these existential dilemmas.
Yeah. There's no magic formula, no easy answer.
So if there's no easy answer, what are we left with? Just a jumble of experiences and anxieties.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I mean, Allen might be skeptical of grand narratives, but he's not a nihilist. Right.
He's deeply interested in human behavior, in our motivations, our desires, our contradictions.
Yeah.
He just doesn't believe there's a simple key to unlock it all. Which is kind of refreshing, actually.
Yeah.
Like he's acknowledging the complexity of life, the messiness of it all.
And that's what makes his characters so relatable, right? They're flawed, they make mistakes, they're often driven by these neurotic impulses.
But they're also trying to figure things out, just like the rest of us.
Exactly. They're searching for love, for meaning, for connection, even if they're going about it in all the wrong ways.
So it's not about finding the perfect answer, it's about the journey, the search itself.
I think that's a big part of it, yeah.
And that journey often leads to some pretty unexpected places.
It does. And that's where Allen's genius really shines.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Think about the doctor in The Lunatic's Tale. who tries to create the perfect woman through brain transplantation.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Classic Alan, right? He achieves his goal, but then finds himself completely dissatisfied.
Falling for someone totally different.
Exactly. And it's like, what's the point he's making there?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's funny, obviously, but there's got to be something more to it.
Right. And I think it goes back to this idea of control. The more we try to control life, the more it seems to slip through our fingers.
Ah, I see. It's like that saying, man plans and God laughs.
Exactly. And Alan seems to be suggesting that maybe true liberation comes from accepting the inherent uncertainty of it all.
Letting go of the need to control everything.
Right. And maybe even finding a way to laugh at it all.
Which brings us to another really interesting element, Alan's engagement with the idea of God.
Ah, yes. Now we're getting to the good stuff. So we're diving back into Woody Allen's world.
Exploring this fascinating intersection of comedy and theology.
And remember that image of God as an underachiever.
Oh, yeah. That really stuck with me from last time.
Me too. It's so provocative, isn't it?
It is, and it raises a really important question.
Oh.
If God isn't exactly stepping up to the plate, what's our role in all of this?
I see where you're going with this.
Like, if we can't rely on divine intervention, where do we turn? What's our responsibility in the face of suffering and injustice?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something that Alan seems to wrestle with constantly in his work.
He does. He really does. And what's so interesting is that he doesn't reject God outright.
Right. It's not a simple dismissal.
It's more like he's engaged in this ongoing debate, this theological argument, even though he claims to be an atheist.
And Commins argues that this is where Alan's concept of living as the loyal opposition comes in.
Oh, yeah. I remember that phrase from Stardust Memories.
Right. And it really captures Alan's whole approach to life and faith, wouldn't you say?
I think so, but I'm curious to unpack it a bit more.
Okay, sure.
What does it actually mean to be the loyal opposition to God?
Well, it's a pretty complex idea.
Okay.
But at its core, I think it's about refusing to accept easy answers or blind faith.
So it's not about passive acceptance or resignation.
Not at all. It's about active engagement. It's
Oh.
about protesting against suffering and injustice.
Demanding more from God, even if you're not sure God's listening.
Exactly. It's about holding God accountable, even if you're not sure God exists.
Wow, that's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and I think it's a very Jewish approach, you know? That tradition of arguing with God, questioning the divine plan.
Oh, I see what you mean, like that line from the Scrolls.
Which one?
My Lord, what hast thou done lately?
Exactly. Alan's work is infused with that same spirit of questioning.
He's not letting God off the hook easily.
Not at all. He's demanding answers, demanding action.
And that's a powerful message, especially in a world where so many people blindly accept suffering as part of God's plan.
It's like he's saying, wake up, look around, question the status quo, don't just accept things as they are.
And it's a deeply humanistic perspective, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like, even if Alan doesn't believe in a personal God, he still cares about justice, about making the world a better place.
And that's where the ethical dimension of living as the loyal opposition comes in.
Okay.
It's not just about complaining or questioning, it's about living a moral life.
Okay, so there's a call to action here.
Exactly. It's about making choices that align with your values, even when it's difficult, even when it's inconvenient.
I never thought I'd hear someone say that Woody Allen advocates for moral living.
I know, right? It sounds strange given his, well, let's just say complicated personal life.
Right.
But if you look closely at his work, you see this consistent exploration of ethical dilemmas.
Oh, interesting. Can you give me an example?
Sure, think about Crimes and Misdemeanors.
Okay, I've seen that one.
Judah, the successful ophthalmologist, gets away with murder, but he's haunted by guilt and ultimately loses his sense of meaning and purpose.
Right. He can't escape the consequences of his actions.
Exactly. On the other hand, you have Cliff, the struggling documentary filmmaker who remains committed to his principles even when it means sacrificing his own happiness.
So it's like Allen is suggesting that living an ethical life is its own reward.
I think so, regardless of whether there's a God or an afterlife to judge us.
It's about living in accordance with your conscience, your values.
Exactly, and what's even more interesting is that it's often his characters who embrace faith who commit the most egregious acts.
Oh, wow, really?
Think about the rabbi in Crimes and Misdemeanors who goes blind.
Oh, yeah, he's a pretty unsympathetic character.
Right, he's a stark example of the hypocrisy and moral failings that can hide beneath religious piety.
So true morality doesn't come from adhering to a set of rules, but from grappling with the complexities of life and making choices that reflect your deepest values.
I think that's a key part of Alan's message. He's encouraging us to question everything, to think for ourselves, and to create our own ethical framework based on compassion, empathy, and a deep respect for human dignity.
That's a pretty tall order, wouldn't you
Yes,
say?
it is.
Especially in a world that often feels so chaotic and morally ambiguous.
Right. How do we even know what the right thing is when everything seems relative?
Exactly. It's like we're all just fumbling around in the dark.
Well, I don't think Alan pretends to have all the answers. He's more interested in posing the questions than in providing solutions.
Which is fair enough.
But I think his work offers some clues.
Oh, like what?
He constantly points us toward the importance of human connection, of compassion, of seeing the world through the eyes of others.
It's interesting that you mentioned seeing, because so many of Alan's characters are involved in visual mediums, filmmakers, photographers, writers.
That's a great observation. I think there's a connection there.
Like it's about paying attention, noticing the details, recognizing the humanity in others, even when it's hidden beneath layers of imperfection.
Exactly. It's like that moment in The Purple Rose of Cairo when Tom Baxter, the fictional character who steps off the screen, connects with those prostitutes.
Oh yeah, that's a powerful scene.
He sees their humanity, their struggles, even though society has cast them aside.
And I think that's a key part of living as the loyal opposition.
Also,
It's about challenging those societal norms, those preconceived notions that dehumanize and marginalize.
it's about recognizing that we're all interconnected.
That our actions have consequences not just for ourselves, but for others as well.
Precisely. And I think that's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels so fragmented and individualistic.
So we've talked about protest, questioning, and moral living as key elements of Alan's loyal opposition.
We have.
But his films can be pretty bleak at times,
They can be.
All this talk about absurdity and the meaninglessness of life, it can leave you feeling a bit hopeless.
That's true. But I think it's important to remember that Alan is a comedian, first and foremost.
Right?
He's not trying to depress us. He's trying to make us laugh, even if it's a nervous laugh.
Laughter as a coping mechanism, a way of acknowledging the pain without being completely overwhelmed by it.
Exactly. But I also think there's more to it than that.
Oh,
Even in his darkest films, Alan offers these glimmers of hope, these moments of beauty and connection that suggest that life, despite all its challenges, can still be meaningful and even joyful at times.
okay, so there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Maybe not a tunnel, but definitely some flickering candles along the way.
I like that metaphor.
And I think exploring those moments of hope and liberation is a perfect way to wrap up our discussion.
Sounds good to me.
Ah,
I think we've reached a good stopping point for now.
we'll pick up the thread in part 3.
See you then, Cineyogis.
So we're back. Still exploring Woody Allen's theological imagination.
And trying to find those glimmers of hope.
Those moments of liberation amidst all the existential angst.
Because let's face it, his films can be pretty heavy sometimes.
They can be, but as we've been discussing, there's also this underlying sense of humor, this lightness of touch.
That keeps it from being too depressing.
Exactly, and I think those moments of hope are even more powerful because they're not presented as these grand pronouncements.
They're more subtle, more nuanced.
Like little sparks of light in the darkness.
Okay, I like that image. So where do we see these sparks? What are some concrete examples?
Well, one example that Commins highlights is the contrast between Cecilia in The Purple Rose of Cairo
Okay.
and Alan Felix in Play Again, Sam.
I've seen both of those films, but I'm not sure I see the connection.
Well, both characters seek refuge in fantasy, right?
Yeah, one in movies and one in, well, Humphrey Bogart.
Exactly, but their approaches are very different.
Oh, so.
Cecilia wants to escape from reality. She immerses herself in movies to avoid the pain and disappointment of her life.
Right. But ultimately, that escape is an illusion.
It is the real world always intrudes, leaving her feeling even more disillusioned.
Whereas Alan uses fantasy as a tool for self-discovery.
Exactly. He identifies with his idol, Humphrey Bogart.
Right.
And through that identification, he gains a new perspective on himself and his situation.
He's using fantasy to engage with reality, not escape from it.
Precisely. And I think that's one of the key insights Alan offers. We all need ways to cope with the absurdity and uncertainty of life.
Yeah, we all have our coping mechanisms.
Right, and sometimes those coping mechanisms can be found in the most unexpected places.
Like movies, art, music, even in our own imaginations.
Mm-hmm.
The key, it seems, is to not let those fantasies consume us, but to use them as springboards for growth. self-awareness, connection with others.
Speaking of connection, let's not forget the transformative power of love in Alan's film.
Oh yes, love definitely plays a big role in his work.
Think about Zelig, the human chameleon.
Who's desperately seeking approval and belonging.
Exactly. It's only when he experiences genuine love and acceptance that he's able to shed his chameleon skin and embrace his true self.
Such a powerful image. And I think it speaks to the profound impact that love can have on our lives.
It can heal old wounds.
Oh,
It can break down walls. It can help us see ourselves and the world in a new light.
and it's not always romantic love, right?
Right. It can be the love of a friend, a family member, even the love of a stranger who shows us kindness and compassion.
I think that's an important point to emphasize.
It is because Alan's films often explore the complexities and contradictions of love.
Oh, they do.
But he never dismisses its power.
Even in his most cynical films, there's a sense that love, however fleeting or flawed, is one of the few things that can make life worth living.
It's a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape.
And it's often in those unexpected moments of connection that Alan's characters find a sense of liberation.
Like in Manhattan when Isaac finally realizes that he loves Tracy.
But she chooses to leave for London.
Right, to pursue her own dreams.
That's a bittersweet moment.
It is, but there's a sense that Isaac has grown.
He's learned something about himself and the nature of love.
He's letting go of control, allowing her to be free.
Which in a way frees him too.
Exactly, and that brings us back to this idea of letting go of surrendering to the flow of life.
Right, trusting that things will work out even if we don't have all the answers.
I think one of Alan's most profound messages is that true liberation comes not from trying to control everything,
Okay.
but from embracing the unknown and finding joy in the present moment.
It's a message that resonates deeply with the principles of yoga, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yoga teaches us to let go of our ego's need for control and to find peace within ourselves.
And I think Alan's films, despite their often neurotic and comedic surface, offer a similar kind of wisdom.
They remind us that life is messy, unpredictable, often absurd.
But there's also beauty, joy and meaning to be found if we're willing to look for it. So where does this leave us, Sin Yogis? What can we take away from our deep dive into Woody Allen's theological imagination?
I think Alan challenges us to live as the loyal opposition not just to God, but to the forces of cynicism, despair, and indifference that threaten to diminish our humanity.
He encourages us to protest, to question, to seek connection, to embrace love, even in its imperfect forms.
And to never lose our sense of humor, even when faced with the absurdity of it all.
Because as Allen so brilliantly demonstrates, laughter can be a powerful weapon against the darkness.
It can. It really can.
It's a way of acknowledging the pain without being consumed by it.
And a reminder that even in a world that often seems meaningless, we still have the power to choose joy, to create meaning, and to live lives that are both profound and playful.
So as you continue to explore the world of cinema, remember to bring that same spirit of inquiry, that same willingness to question, that same open-heartedness to the experience.
And who knows, maybe you'll find some unexpected glimmers of hope and liberation along the way.
Until next time, Cine Yogis, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep laughing.